Shalom, everybody. Welcome back to the Baal Sulam's Matan Torah with commentary by Rebbe Avraham Mordechai Gottlieb, referring to as the Rebbe Shlita. We are on page 113, section 21, at the top. The last class, we spoke more about the notion of tipping the scale for the entire world, either to the side of merit or demerit, by our actions, whether good or bad, meaning giving or receiving. So we're going to continue this topic. The header reads, when Rabbi Elazar states that each individual in the world is responsible for the whole world, he is referring to the situation when the people of the world become worthy of taking upon themselves the service of loving the other. The merit of each individual is seen as the amount that tipped the scale to the side of selfless love. The Baal HaSulam begins. This is the intent of the words of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, when he says, quote, the world is judged according to its majority. He is referring to the role of the Israeli nation to prepare the world to undergo a certain process of refinement until the people of the world become worthy of taking upon themselves the service of God to no less than an extent to which the people of Israel were worthy at the time they received the Torah. This level of refinement is considered in the language of our sages that they have attained the majority of merits, zchuyot, which we clarified in the last class. Zechut is merit, but it also can mean spiritual refinement, from the language of hizdachut, meaning to refine in Hebrew. So they attain the majority of merits, spiritual refinements, so that they outweigh the side of the merit, which is the contaminated self-love, the egoism, the will to receive for itself alone. He continues clearly, if the amount on the merit side of the scale, which represents the higher comprehension of the nature of loving the other, is large and is greater than the amount on the side of the contaminated demerit, then the people with such merit are prepared to make the decision and give their assent by saying, quote, we will do and we will hear. Nasiv v'nishma. As Israel said when they received the Torah. But before that, before they obtain a majority of virtues, self-love certainly prevails and determines that they refuse to accept the yoke of service of God. As we've spoken about Israel, the nation of Israel, the Jewish people are to be like a big sibling to the other nations of the world. We were given the Torah so that we can refine ourselves through all of its details and mechanisms, so that we can be the example and build a solid society based on its principles of Yehavta l'recha kamocha, loving the other as oneself. And once we could accomplish this, the whole world will follow suit and will be, as we stated, a segula, a treasured nation of priests, as is our inheritance. Priest, the Kohanim, they taught Torah. They were on very high levels, highest we say in our tradition, being the Kohanim, the Levites, and the rest of Klal Yisrael. But they're also in service because they're exemplifying chesed. They're exemplifying giving and the Creator's qualities to the world, that being all of Klal Yisrael supposed to be like that, but they're also in service. They're also serving Klal Yisrael. So to us being the priests of the world, the Kohanim of the Olam is meaning to say that we are to serve the world. We're supposed to be giving to give. We're supposed to be altruistic. So we're supposed to serve the other. There might be these ideas otherwise that others may serve us. Or in the time to come, post the Mashiach, the Redeemer has arrived and the whole world has changed. The New World Order has come. A New World Order of giving and loving and following the Torah in its deepest aspects. Then we'll be on top. You can say that we'll be on top relative to the quality that we're displaying, because what is above in importance is giving, and what's below in importance is receiving. So we would be on the top, assuming we achieve such a level and are able to exemplify it, surely. But that's not to say that we're more important than anyone else. And we'll get into that more in the next lesson. For the time being, let's continue. The Rabbi Shita says, on the notion of loving the other, I'll read inside again the second paragraph of what we just read, and I'll go into the commentary. Clearly, if the amount on the merit side of the scale, which represents the higher comprehension of the nature of loving the other, is large and is greater than the amount on the side of the contaminated merit, then the people with such merit are prepared to make the decision and give their asset by saying, Naseh v'nishma, we will do and we will hear, as Israel said. But before that, before they obtain a majority of virtues, self-love certainly prevails and determines that they refuse to accept the yoke of the service of God. The Rabbi Shlita says, the understanding referred to here is not external, but rather an internal understanding, where we sense from our own central point of inner truth that loving the other is the true principle of life. Only this principle can move us forward toward attachment to God and eternity. And we need to apply it both to our individual selves and also to our society. Easier said than done, slowly but surely. To consider the state of the world and the difficulties that it is experiencing, the fears and doubts and uncertainty that are rampant, especially in this generation of Corona and the like. How much more so do we need these ideas, and to prioritize them and focus them, and to be ingrained and involved in them more so than the other matters that would veer us from Kedusha, holiness. Holiness, of course, meaning something sanctified, something separate, something distinct, being giving. Because naturally we receive. So to contemplate the status of the world, being that there's generally two parameters that the world can abide by. Path of Torah being the path of light, or the path of suffering. Clearly we're in the path of suffering. It's a bitter thing to acknowledge, but it's all for the best, whatever the situation is. The Creator is always involved at every microsecond, willing reality into being, providing us with every scenario, only in order to give goodness to us. So all the suffering we experience is because we're not bringing suffering upon ourselves. Sounds a little strange, but I'll clarify that at the end of the class. The Baal Sulam continues. And this is what our sages intended when they said in Masechet Kedushin, the Talmud, page 40b, whoever does a single commandment is blissful for having tipped the scale to the side of merit for himself or herself and for the whole world. That is, in the final accounting, when the world will be judged to be on the side of merit, the portion of merit of an individual member of Israel is included as the amount that tips the scale. Similarly, when weighing sesame seeds, one can add one seed at a time to one side of the scale until the point where it outweighs the other side. Here, each seed surely provides a measure towards the tilting of the scale. And without that seed, the scale would have remained balanced. So this saying of the sages states that in the same manner as the sesame seeds, a single act of an individual member of Israel tilts the scale for the whole world to the side of merit. No matter how small the action, whether it be an act of kindness towards fellow man or towards the Creator by following his ways, whether it be the body of Jewish law, halacha, or the like. Even if it's considered a tiny sesame seed, that's all it takes to literally tip the scale. Considering it's all one scale and it's all in one world, because we're trying to get back to the point of being one man with one heart, as we were at the time of Matan Torah, receiving the Torah. So too, the power of each and every beautiful soul.